Hello, I'm David Talbot, and I'm Managing Director, Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities, and today I'm joined by ValOre VP Exploration, Colin Smith. Thank you for joining us today, Colin.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Now, welcome to Toronto. Now, what are you most excited to see or do here at PDAC 2022?
Well, for anybody that's been in spring in Vancouver the last couple months, the sunshine is a welcome sight. It's been a wet one for us, but probably more importantly than that, there's a few members of our team, which I've been speaking with on a daily basis for over 2 years, our team in Brazil, and actually meeting them for the first time here. Tiago Diniz, our exploration manager, has been a real treat. And then, of course, seeing the familiar faces that we all see in the halls here. So,
yeah, familiar faces, even though we haven't seen some of them for 2.5 years.
That's right, yeah.
Exactly. Now, before we get started, what is your background? How did you get into the exploration industry?
So I'm a geologist by trade, exploration background. I did my studies, undergrad studies at UBC, and then a master's at UVic. And since then, I've sort of started in the public sector with the ministry in Kamloops, the Ministry of Energy and Mines, and then in academia with some mapping project in northern BC, epithermal gold, porphyry copper. From there, went to De Beers, did some diamond exploration out east, and was 3 years up at the CV Gold Mine with Claude Resources and later SSR. And then in 2017 or so, I met Jim Paterson, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. And it sounds like you've got different commodities under your belt as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, it's been, you sort of go where the work is, and I was lucky enough to graduate from UBC in a pretty strong bull market. So there's a lot of good opportunities for young geos like myself, and so yeah, I've sort of bounced around a bit.
Excellent. Now, how would you describe the industry now as opposed to when you entered?
Yeah, I mean, when I entered, like I said, I was lucky to be in a bull market, and so work was all over the place. And you hear from the sort of the seasoned vets that goes up and goes down. So I've been through a couple of those cycles now, and I think getting into it, you're so green and everything's so new to you, and you sort of grow with the industry, and lucky to be in another upcycle now, hopefully, that will last for some time.
Excellent, good. Now, let's talk about ValOre metals. I think it's a unique vehicle. You've got uranium, you've got platinum group metals, and either project could really support a junior explorer. How did this unlikely combination come to be?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, after Fukushima, there was quite a downturn, as you know, in the uranium sector, and our flagship property at the time, Angalac, is truly a world-class exploration project, but it just became harder to gain traction, and it wasn't the right time for us to push a uranium project. So we rolled the company back, did a name change to ValOre Metals from Kivlik Energy, and did a rights offering, and at that time I was brought onto the team to review new projects, new opportunities. And so we were looking for something that had a substantial prior investment, was outside of the uranium space, so precious metals, base metals, stable jurisdiction, good access and infrastructure, and Pedra Branca, this northeastern Brazilian project, certainly fit that bill, and so we acquired that in 2019.
Great. And you talked about that uranium downturn. Uranium is now back in vogue. It has been for a couple of years. Valuations are up across the board. Why not just spin out the uranium assets now into a new vehicle, or vice versa, spin out the platinum group bill?
Yeah, and that's a question we've been asked probably in every interview over the course of the last couple of years, even, or certainly the last year. And we have an ongoing strategic review process led by Canaccord Genuity, where we're looking at all opportunities, the most likely being a spin-out of the Brazilian asset, Pedra Branca, but certainly anything is on the table.
Okay, so let's start on that PGM project, Pedra Branca. You doubled your resource to about 2.2 million ounces last year. Mm-hmm. Another positive exploration program since. What have you learned during that recent drill program?
Yeah, I think it really it corroborated what we always thought about the project. It was, when reviewing it on outset, we saw it as a really high potential exploration project, a lot of upside to grow the resource, to rediscover targets that had been maybe overlooked in the past. And so through this exploration methodology, which I'm sure we'll get to in a bit here, it's really proven to us that that's the case. Doubling the resource in 2 drill programs, and with a lot of room left to expand the current deposits. And as you said, we've got 4 or 5 ongoing targets that are starting to look really, really good for the next drill program.
Okay. Now, maybe just let's dig a little bit deeper, and forgive the pun, into maybe your auger program here. You've accelerated the use of auger drilling over the last couple years. You use it in Brazil. You're now using it again in the territories. Are you using this for reconnaissance work to make discoveries, or are you using this for a targeting tool prior to core drilling?
Yeah, so we actually haven't used it yet in the territory, but it is a tool that I think would be amenable to work up in Nunavut. And in terms of when we use it in the targeting pipeline, it's really something that can be used throughout, straight from target generation to during a drill program. So, typically we employ the Trado auger after a detailed prospecting mapping campaign in which we sort of identify where the target intrusions are at surface. Then we follow up with a tight fence of auger holes, and subsequent to that, wait for assays. Subsequent to those assays being positive, we do some trenching and or drilling, and it's worked out very well for us.
Okay. Now, is there anything that can help you hone in on higher grade palladium? That is the key to this project, I believe. Is it thickening of ultramafic rocks, perhaps looking for more chromite? What's really helping you target these things?
Yeah, so you're right that the chromatite reef horizons are associated with the high grade. That's where you get the 10s, 20s, up to 100 plus gram per ton palladium platinum. And those are hosted within the ultramafic intrusions. So for us, the real focus is to identify and drill the target intrusions. Once we have a drill core hole into them, or an RC hole, then we can subsequently search for the chromatite reefs.
Right. And you have 7 resource areas right now. How many would you anticipate by the time of your next resource estimate, and when might we expect that study?
Good question. I mean, I think of the 7 in the current 2022 resource, which was released in Q1 of this year, probably a good half of them, 3 for sure, are open to significant expansion. Subsequent to that, like I said, we have 3 targets that we're very excited on right now, which we're running the sort of targeting methodology we were just discussing with the Trado. And so if all those go well, then we would potentially look to see 3 new zones in the resource estimate, but remains to be seen.
Right. And what is the timeline of wrapping some economics around the project? Should we expect entirely open pit scenarios? Would rhodium or nickel or chrome or other minerals be considered in the study?
Yeah, so we're working on a big push right now is the metallurgy. We've worked out a great flow sheet for the fresh material at Pedra Branca. The focus is now on developing one for the weathered material, which comprises about 30% of the resource, so maybe 1.5 million of the ounces are in the fresh, so we have a flow sheet for that. So once we get the metallurgy to a stage that we're ready for a PA really at any time. So we have been assaying for rhodium and of course the base metals as well. They weren't included in the last resource estimate, but if it's something that we deem can add value to a PA, certainly we'll include. Yeah.
Okay, so you talk about your metallurgy and perhaps a PEA. Any other catalysts that we should expect this year?
Yeah, so just ongoing exploration. As I said, we've got 3 of those targets we're looking to actively trench, and a couple we've already started, and subsequent to that we'll be trenching another target. So really we're just amassing an arsenal of really high quality, low risk drill targets that are not at targets included in the current resource. So ultimately that will certainly be a catalyst for us this year as well.
Excellent. Okay, so shifting our attention to uranium. You've got the Angalac project in Nunavut territory. I really like this project. I have for a long time. It's 43 million pounds. It grades 0.7% uranium, which is amongst the highest grade in the world outside of the Athabasca Basin. And I guess just remind us how you came across this project.
Yeah, so a company called Kaminak Gold staked the ground around the Lac 50 Trend area back in the mid to late 2000s, and then worked out the first deal of its kind with NTI, which is Nunavut Tungavuk Inc., and that allowed us to explore for uranium on Inuit-owned land, which is the block of land that hosts the Lac 50 Trend resource area. Subsequent to that, Kaminak spun out the project in the form of Kivalliq Energy, and so Angalac was Kivalliq Energy's flagship project for a number of years, from 2008 to 2016. We were very active, and then, like I said, in 2018 we rolled back, did a pivot to the PGM space and a rights offering. And but since acquisition, Kivalliq has invested over $55 million in the project to date on exploration, and we've got an $11 million program on the way right now.
Yeah, it's been a very efficient drill program over
Yes.
over that period. I think you're finding uranium for how much a pound? It's like $1.30 a pound.
About that. Yep.
In that range.
Yes.
So, and that's Canadian.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
So you really perfected your exploration methodology about a decade ago. You systematically work on your target pipeline. You look towards resource expansion. You test new targets, do recon drilling. Is that what we should expect again this year? And what sort of budget do you have for this year?
Yeah, so it's an $11 million program, and as you said, Dave, we're pretty happy with our methodology to add ounces to the resource, or pounds rather, and also to advance targets we not necessarily have drilled ourselves. So part of the program this year, we have completed a significant ground VLF, electromagnetic and mag program, to cover big portions of the block, especially on the west side of the land position, which don't have coverage. Further to that, we just are on our last hole of RC drill program. We've done a couple releases on that, pending another release this week. We're very, very excited at the potential of a couple targets that are really on the opposing side of the sub-basin from Lac 50. So it'll be a blend between advancing the data set on the less explored western side of the block, and also hopefully adding pounds to the resource.
Right. I want to talk about those. You recently started drilling for the first time in 6 years in the couple of areas without resources, and you mentioned those two, Dipole and Yat are those areas. What how is that resource? How has that RC drilling been going so far?
It's been very exciting, Dave. I mean, the Dipole target in particular is actually situated 27 kilometers to the southwest of the Lac 50 Trend resource area, on the opposing side of the Anjikuni sub-basin. And it was last drilled by us in 2015 with 9 core holes. We hit multiple zones of near-surface high-grade uranium in all 9 holes. And so subsequent to that, this year we've drilled 17 RC holes, shallow RC holes at Dipole. We hit anomalous counts per second, the scintillometer, assays pending, but in 14 of the 17 holes. And a couple, we had one hole that actually maxed out the scintillometer at over 65,000 counts per second. So it's certainly not the type of rock you want to have your morning coffee next to, but we're excited to see it in the box.
Yeah, but that's not unusual. You've had high grade up there in the past.
Yeah. There's intervals at Dipole that run north of 5% uranium in drill core. So we're certainly, the thing's wide open along strike in both directions from that zone. It's wide open at depth, so the RC is certainly going to be expanding that zone.
And perhaps tell us about the polymetallic potential.
Yeah, which is the Yat target, which is sort of equidistant between Dipole and the Lac 50 Trend, just on the margin of the sub-basin. And it's a bit of an oddball target in the sense that it has very high-grade precious metals values, as you alluded to. So it's over ounce per ton palladium, over an ounce per ton gold, high-grade base metals as well as high-grade uranium, which was pulled from some trenching and RC drilling that was done in 2015, 2016. Mm-hmm. So some trench samples and channel samples ran, like I said, extremely high-grade precious metals. So we drilled 4 RC holes this year into Yat, and have released the details of 3 of them, some very high counts in some of them, but in the case of Yat, we actually sampled the entirety of each hole just because there might be precious metals unassociated to radioactivity. So assays pending, but we like what we see.
Okay, and that's a little atypical, but this basin, the Angelac Basin, is a lot similar to the Athabasca Basin, I guess.
Yep.
What sort of deposits are you really looking for? Are you focused on basement rocks? Are you looking for perhaps an unconformity type deposit?
Yeah, that's right, Dave. I mean, it's the Anjikuni sub-basin is actually a sub-basin of the Athabasca. So from an exploration targeting standpoint and a deposit model standpoint, it's very much the same. So we're focusing on basement-hosted, unconformity, associated, structurally controlled uranium systems. But one of the advantages of Angelac and the situation of our claims is that we're sort of staked sort of like a hat around the margin of the basin. So what that facilitates is us to target these things to surface. We're not drilling through 2, 3, 4, 500 meters of sedimentary cover of a basin to get the unconformity. We're really drilling these things from surface. So our intercept depths in the counts per second values this year have been from 9 meters to 115 meters vertical depth sort of thing.
Great, great, okay. And I guess to wrap it up, Colin, you know, ESG is becoming particularly important in this industry. Nuclear power and uranium are known as green energy sources. Regarding the social aspect of ESG for ValOre in particular, how do you go about enhancing your community relations with the NTI or First Nations and Nunavut? You know, how important is this to management?
It's critical. You know, I mean, without the agreement we have with NTI, we wouldn't be exploring at Angelac. Further to that, we do as much as we can to hire locals from the communities up north, and that includes wildlife monitors, which we have on site at all time to monitor for caribou migrations, and using local businesses and contractors as much as we can. And it works both ways. I mean, the local knowledge of the land and logistics up there is critical for us to have that insight from the folks who live up there. And vice versa, we want to do as much as we can to support the communities and the businesses up north.
Great. Okay, well, let's wrap it up there. Thank you very much, Colin, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Dave. Yeah, great.
Okay, I'm David Talbot. I'm a Managing Director here of Red Cloud Securities, and this was Colin Smith. He was VP Exploration of ValOre Metals.